You ever have that satisfying feeling when you didn't get a parking ticket, even though you should have got one because you parked way too long or somewhere that you shouldn't have been parking? That feeling may be going away fast. I'm Scott Ott with Stephen Green and Bill Whittle, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, the D.C. City Council, and by D.C. I mean direct current. No, wait a minute. It's the District of Columbia. Washington, D.C. City Council is considering a pilot program to grant a troop of select citizens the power to issue parking tickets. And this seemed to me like an opportunity for the nation to come together around something. Because, Stephen Green, isn't it true that people who are conservatives or libertarians really believe in individual rights and the idea of personal responsibility and taking care of your own and policing your own neighborhood, so to speak? So isn't this a fantastic idea that we would deputize some local citizens to be able to issue parking tickets in at least one city and maybe more?
Oh yeah, it's such a great idea. I think it should go national. We could call it the Standardized Ticketing and Safety Inducement Program, or Stasi.
Now, what do you mean by that, Stephen?
Well, it's a nation of snitches is what it is. You know, the biggest jerk in high school, I mean, maybe not the biggest jerk, the biggest dink in high school was the guy who volunteered to serve as hall monitor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just that one kid, not a whole lot of friends, stooling for the guards. And this is turning us into a nation, or at least a city.
It was a dink.
It is a dink, just a minor nuisance, right?
Well,
yeah.
do you feel better about this, or would you feel better if they simply had cameras on every corner that would keep an eye on cars that were overparked and automatically issue you a parking ticket?
Neither. We're Americans. You got to catch us in the act. That's the deal.
Well, they are catching you in the act. Your fellow citizens are catching you in the act.
No, my fellow citizens are supposed to be on my side. It's us against the authority. We're Americans, damn it. The British come to take our guns.
I thought you were for justice. What do you mean us against the authorities? The police officer is your friend.
No,
I don't know who this Steve Green fella is, but I like the cut of his jib.
As a libertarian-leaning conservative, or a conservative-leaning libertarian, whatever the hell I am, I believe in two things: law and disorder. And I'm not kidding about this at all. I really do. This whole thing of law and order is about conformity and stifling and snitching on each other to the authorities, and that's not what this country is about. Yeah, you know what? We're human beings. We screw up. Maybe we drive too fast. Maybe we double park while we run in and get a sandwich or whatever. But the authorities have got to be the ones to catch us, because we're a nation of rule breakers, which makes us a nation of innovators, which is the engine of this country. And if you start stifling that by having a snitch on each other for every little minor thing, then you snuff out that essential flame of Americanism. You look at what's going on in China right now with their social credit system that they're starting to impose, where if your neighbors don't like you enough, if you spend too much time playing video games, if you don't pay a debt, and you go to buy a plane ticket, you can get demoted from a 2-hour plane flight to a 30-hour train ride because of this automated authoritarianism that has people snitching on each other. And that, damn it, is not America. I don't care if it's a parking ticket or treason. You gotta catch me at it. And I want to be able to trust my fellow neighbors to be the same kind of American that I am.
By the way, your neighbor has mentioned a thing or two to us about your treasonous activities as well.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to him.
So, Bill Whittle,
but I'm not going to talk to the authorities. I'm going to talk to him.
That's right. In your own home state of California, Bill, you now can download an app that offers a $5 bounty. And this, by the way, is coming from Petula Dvorak's column in the Washington Post. A $5 bounty to citizens who snap photos and license plates of folks who are texting and driving. And in New York, vigilant citizens can get a 25% cut of tickets they issue for vehicles that they catch idling, because, of course, that's destroying the planet. Bill, isn't this a great way to sort of tap into the, it's sort of like Uber for law enforcement, isn't it?
I am not going to steal your wonderful line. I'm going to let you have the wonderful line.
I don't remember my wonderful line.
Yes, you do. So what could possibly go wrong with the app that gives you a bonus for finding somebody who's texting and driving? What would that entail doing?
Well, it depends. If you're in a car yourself, then you got to wonder.
In other
how
words,
you captured that shot.
Yes. Oh my God, that guy's texting and driving. Hang on, get the phone here. Steer with my knee. Caught him at La Cienega and 405. The part that's the most terrifying is the bit about getting a cut.
How so?
That's well, because you're taking a bad idea, a real bad idea, and you're adding significant incentive to it. I agree with Steve. I got a parking ticket for the first time in a long time just a couple days ago. I had 1 minute. I had 1 hour and 4 minutes on the thing. I set my timer on my phone. I got there 1 hour and 4 minutes later, and the guy was writing me the ticket.
Oh man!
And I realize in Los Angeles, because of our extremely advanced state of oppression here, you can pay for parking. You have to pay for parking meters with a credit card. So if it's communicating to somebody to authorize the debit card, then it also is sending out a signal the instant. I bet it. I was going to say the second it goes off, but I bet you it sends out a signal 5-10 minutes before it goes. Right, and that's pretty close to fascism, but it's still, it's still the parking guy. When you turn citizens against each other, I agree with Steve 100%. You can't use citizens to oppress Americans. That's the government's job, and
Can't outsource that.
And it creates the kind of society that is the groundwork of people living in fear. I don't think people are going to be living in fear of getting an idling ticket, but it sets the stage for it. I am not a law enforcement official, but I am nevertheless administering the law. And my kind of take on that is, who died and made you Chief Wiggum? It's like you have no power to do this whatsoever. It won't fly in the country. It'll work in California, but not in the United States, not in America. And it's repulsive. And what's especially repulsive about it is what Steve said about the high school guy. Totalitarian systems, this is the part that nobody seems to get. Nobody seems to understand this. Totalitarian systems are only possible because of the bureaucratic acquiescence of the dinks, the people who need a little power, who when given a little bit of power, will use it to become Napoleon. And you see this, not always, but often you see this in places like the post office or the DMV, where it's like, you waited in line for 40 minutes, have you? You wealthy-looking person with a nice-looking job and a good car and a gorgeous wife. Well, guess what? You didn't fill this form out quite exactly right. So now you're going to have to go over to my friend over there, and you're going to have to wait in that line for an hour, and then you can come back to my line and wait another 45 minutes. Serves you right for not being in this living hell. And this is how it's powered. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. I think it's reprehensible, and I think most Americans would. And when you consider how close you get to first degree murder, when you find somebody writing a ticket for your car and that person is wearing a uniform, I don't know how I would behave if it turned out that it was some kid with a Che T-shirt writing me a ticket for parking on the streets that I'm already paying for through my taxes anyway.
Well, there are things that people do that cause inconvenience to other people, and the inconsiderate nature of those of us who do those things deserves to be redressed in some way. But let me tell you two short stories to tell you what I feel about this particular situation of the idea of deputizing citizens to issue parking tickets or writing people up for cars idling or texting and driving. In one situation, when I lived in Excelsior Springs, Missouri, I actually had my very young daughter at the time in my arm, and I was on the sidewalk in front of my house. There are cars parked on both sides of the one-way street that ran in front of our little residential neighborhood. Speed limit on that street was 15 miles an hour, and here comes this Mustang up the street, moving at substantially faster than 15 miles an hour, kind of burning some rubber and just flying up that street. Now, lots of kids lived on that street. And again, cars parked on both sides, very narrow street, hard to see when kids are coming and going and things like that. And this guy, I was just kind of between my car and the next car when this guy came past. And I don't know what drove me to do this, but I just reached out and slapped the rear quarter panel of his car as it went by. He, at that point, slammed on the brakes, peeled out going backwards, and pulled up and started to open his mouth. And I leaned into the window and I said, "Young man, I'm just trying to save you from waking up every day of your life, seeing the head of a child rolling over your windshield as you awaken for your prison breakfast." And he looked at me and said, "Yes, sir." And then slowly drove away. Now, the second story is my wife and I were walking into a McDonald's, and she was before me, of course, because I held the door for her. And she walked in and immediately pivoted on her heel and came out. And I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "Oh, that guy in front of me's got his pants down around his backside, and I really don't want to see that." And I said, "Give me a second." And I stepped inside the door and I said, "Excuse me, sir, would you mind pulling your pants up above your pelvic bones so that my wife and I can dine in here without having to stare at your backside?" And the guy looked at me, and he was kind of dressed with chains and a hat on sideways at the time, was trying to be real hip. And he said, "Well, I'm from New York City, and that's how we roll." And I said, "Welcome to Pennsylvania. Now pull your pants up." And he did. So the thing is, the problem I have with this story, I'll tell you what, everybody else who was standing in line at the McDonald's kind of quietly made eye contact with me and were like, "Thank you." They were just like mouthing "thank you" to me. And I'm like, why didn't anybody else? Why is this such a big deal? Anyway, the problem I have with this deputizing of these citizens to write parking tickets is that the citizens are not taking action on their own behalf to make their neighborhoods better or safer or more convenient, or to be able to speak politely or in a civil manner to their neighbors about behavior that is causing trouble for other people. They're outsourcing that to the government, and then the government is giving them a little beanie and a little badge and saying, "Now you go out and be our actors on behalf of truth, justice, and the American way." The difference between a real American and some Fabian Society panty waist is that real Americans go out there and talk to their neighbors when they have a problem, and they deal with their problems. And if somebody's parking in front of your store and shouldn't be there, then you go and leave a note on their windshield and you say, "Excuse me, my business depends upon this parking spot being available, and you've been tying it up all day. That's costing me profits. If you'd like to talk to me about this subject, please come see me. If not, please be prepared to inflate your tires later." I'm not saying that last part. You shouldn't do that. But in any case, we should deal with that. That's the way Americans keep law and order among themselves without having to resort to going to cry to big government and asking for the authority to be the hall monitor, as Stephen Green pointed out. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.